The 1955 deluge provided the lesson the hunter needed, that its abundant waterways will always be a force to be reckoned with. Floodplain management plans have already been developed for the lower Hunter down to Newcastle and for some of the Port Stephens area. Now the State Government and Port Stephens Council are financing a major flood study on the Paterson and Hunter rivers between Paterson and Hinton.
There's been no true line of where the flood actually finishes up. There's a bit of hearsay and a bit of that. This $90,000 is going to be spent on finding out exactly where it will finish, whether it's 1 in 20, 50 or 100-year flood.
The study starts in a fortnight with a door-to-door survey of hundreds of local households. It'll take about 6 months to gather the necessary details on flood flows, heights and hazards. The eventual floodplain management plan will provide guidelines for land use, especially development, and for flood emergency and mitigation strategies.
Each year, Japan produces 200,000 tonnes of dried and pickled radish. It's one of the most important crops in Asia, and supply simply can't meet demand. For the past 12 months, New South Wales agriculture has been searching for a variety to suit the discerning Japanese market. 2 of these have passed with flying colours.
If we are able to achieve just only 5% of the market, it turned to about $250 million a year for Australia.
The daikon radishes are now being analysed further to ensure a top crop can be delivered year-round. The drying process has been refined to suit Japanese tastes. Now all that's needed is a cooperative to produce and process the vegetables.
I just hope that Australian businessmen could have a time to look at this opportunity.
All going well, the New South Wales Agricultural Department believes this venture could pave the way for a lucrative Asian export market in dried vegetables. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
There's one hotel in Parramatta that's been in business longer, but it doesn't boast the view of the Hunter River that the Junction Inn has enjoyed for 160 years. The original licence here was granted to George Oliver on the 4th of July in 1836. The 2-storey sandstone building has been added to plenty of times since then, but it's never stopped trading over the years, a special achievement attributed to it being a special pub.
I think to the people around Torres it is, because it's involved with community, sporting, and there's a lot of things that go on the river, and we're the pub on the river.
Today may be the official anniversary, but the pub will begin kicking up its heels in earnest tomorrow, with patrons old and new expected to turn out for 2 days of 160th birthday celebrations.
Complaints about noise, odour and unhygienic conditions are some of the reasons why Wyong Council is strictly controlling animals other than dogs or cats. The regulations are specific.
We're talking about roosters crowing, we're talking about pigeons, about the keeping of various types of animals, even down to bees.
It also covers distances animals must be kept from bedrooms and kitchens. Disputes concerning neighbours' animals have been on the increase, and with 80% of the Shire's population living in residential areas, Council claims its tough stance has been welcomed.
We've had no complaints about the policy since it's been adopted, and certainly it's been well received in the community.
And Wyong Council plans to keep it. Those breaching the regulations will be issued with a notice and given time to make alternative arrangements. A court order follows if no action is taken. Requests for exemptions could have been made while the policy was on display. For those who didn't, it seems it's now too late. Meanwhile, Wyong-Shire's controversial dog policy, introduced 12 months ago and limiting 2 such animals to each household, has been suspended. The council is awaiting the outcome of the companion animal legislation with the state government. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. Bronwyn Bishop's visit to the Williamtown base near Newcastle was a familiarisation exercise, part of a whirlwind national tour of the Army, Air Force and Navy. Today, Mrs Bishop was invited to see the RAF base from a different perspective, high in the sky in an F-18 Hornet. But while she was happy to go through the motions, the flight wasn't to be. Apparently not a case of last-minute nerves, but in the interests of the economy.
At a time when everybody else is tightening their belts and cost-cutting, we're doing our bit too.
Instead, the minister opted for a trip in the relative safety of the flight simulator, where it wasn't long before she took out a few MiG-23s. Also high on the agenda for the visit, family support for Air Force staff.
And I'm meeting with the families as well, including looking at their childcare facility here today, because to have happy personnel, you've got to have happy families.
The minister spent the afternoon meeting Air Force personnel and their families. Tomorrow she'll visit HMAS Manora at Newcastle's Four Jacques dockyard for further briefings. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
After 4 days of junior competition, the Opens took to the courts in Newcastle this afternoon, kicking off the Senior Country Championships. Quick to impress in the men's singles tournament was Newcastle's William O'Neill. The number 2 seed won his match in straight sets to advance to the next round. Singles and doubles finals will be played on Sunday. Rugby League at its round 15 this weekend of the Newcastle competition. Waratah, Mayfield and Cessnock are midway through their clash at Marathon Stadium, while in Sunday's matches Toronto plays Maitland, North Nelson Bay host Curry, Souths tackle Lakes and Wests battle the Butcher Boys. The NBN Soccer League kicks off tomorrow with the match between Wallsend and Western. Broadmeadow meet Highfields, while 3 games on Sunday, Deloraine play West Wallsend, Pasminco up against Maitland and Hamilton clash with Cessnock. And the Adamstown Rosebuds travel to Sydney on Saturday for their round 22 match with Sutherland. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
The big Australian steel plant in Newcastle is ailing and the prognosis isn't good. Union delegates met with BHP management again today. There have been a series of talks, but as yet little has been sorted out.
I have an awful gut feeling that BHP may walk away from steel making in Newcastle. It will be a disaster for Newcastle, and I can't see any other word for it than a disaster.
A 12-month review of the steel-making plant will be undertaken. The unions say most of the 3,000 workers will lose their jobs anyway with the installation of an electric arc furnace, or the company may just maintain the steel rolling mills. BHP has given a commitment that jobs will be safe for at least 3 years. The political pressure is heating up. The Australian government dug deep for the company in 1983 with the steel industry plan, taxpayers' money going in to save the industry.
I hope the big Australian can look after some of the little Australians on the way through.
Good, mate. Thanks very much. Now, or you got the no, we've done that. Are you getting all the terms?
I'm learning.
The Hunter Eagles have had a rough introduction to the Australian Baseball League. Their disappointing efforts on the field have been mirrored with just as much strain off the paddock. But hoping to turn a new leaf, the club has appointed a new general manager, Ian Lewis.
I've got to forget all that and now go forward from here, and I've got 2 weeks to put it together.
The ABL has given the Eagles until the end of the month to find a new home base. After stints at Marathon and Maitland, the club then looked at Macquarie Field and more recently Harker Oval in Newcastle. The Eagles had planned to use that ground for season 96-97, but they've been forced to withdraw their proposal.
ABL directors deemed from their facility document that it didn't come up to standard. Now, that's probably a great slap in the face for Newcastle.
The Eagles have entered into negotiations with Marathon Stadium, but that too has a downfall. American pitchers think the fences are too short and have refused to join the club if the deal with Marathon comes through.
Their bosses back in Montreal felt that they were being hit out of the park too often. It didn't help their statistics, so the Montreal people weren't all that impressed.
Without the Eagles, the ABL starts in October. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
And is Reese here as well? Find that the things that you have actually purposely constructed this course. You have to ask yourself what could be more sensible. Launched, and thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you very much, Professor Lester, for your kind words. May I...
Organised by the Registered Clubs Association, representatives voiced their anger over a gaming package proposed by Minister for Gaming Richard Face, designed to help small hotels compete with large clubs. The Australian Hotel Association claims that many pubs can't compete with large clubs, which use their huge gaming revenue to reduce their prices for food and other services, often at below cost. The government is now considering allowing the hotels to have up to 30 poker machines instead of the current limit of 10 card machines. But the clubs say this would only draw money away from the community funding they provide.
Our main concerns are that if the government gives into the bullying tactics of the AHA and gives the hotels 30 of our poker machines, then there's going to be a siphoning of funding which we use for providing better and better club facilities for the use of the whole community and funding for community facilities and organisations. That's going to be siphoned across to the private profit of just a handful of hoteliers in New South Wales.
By law, all surplus revenue generated by club poker machines must be reinvested into the community through donations to charities or other services, or through the improvement of club facilities for members. Hotels, however, have no such requirement, the clubs arguing any extra revenue generated by hotels will simply turn into private profit. The Clubs Association plans holding further mass meetings over the coming weeks. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
The two bitches that I have problems with, they can't stand the sight of each other. As soon as they see each other, they just become very aggressive and difficult to control.
Something loud in the neighbourhood? Who are you going to call? Sylvia Wilson is the Dr. Dolittle of Australian dog training, talking to the animals in a language they can understand. She uses just one call to cut out any confusion.
Sit. I use a language very similar to what the dog does. It's a growling sound, and it just removes all doubt.
It's debatable whether Lucky or Finale can understand any language. These fox terriers are loudspeakers on legs. The closer they get to one another, the greater the volume. After less than half an hour with each dog, Sylvia may not have them seeing eye to eye, but at least they're not trying to take an eye for an eye.
The difference in them is amazing. They just seem very much more concentrated on what you're trying to teach them rather than what's going on around them.
Some councils have already backed Barkbusters. The $195 course a more pleasant alternative to traditional methods of controlling difficult dogs.
We want to be a responsible owner of a dog. This type of action is definitely needed.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Good shot, mate. Yeah, still got two. Yeah, it's a ripper. Got here. Good shot, mate. Yeah, still got two. Check line, mate.
Had the bookmakers smiling, $56.30 and $12.10. The places $2.60 and $4.50. The Quinella $178.80 and the trifecta $3,763.10. North to Sydney now, where the Winter Cup was the feature event at Rosehill Gardens. Nasserich paid $12.60 and $3.50, the Quinella $32 and the trifecta a little more than $965. Now to race 7, the Quality Handicap. Rum Rustic paid $11 and $3.10, number 7 Ripper paid $6.40 and $2.80, the Quinella $198.70 and the trifecta upwards of $3,800.
Truckies say this isn't the way they should be spending their Saturday mornings. The wait is more painful for truck drivers as they're paid per delivery rather than an hourly rate. They say the blame falls on the shoulders of Port Waratah. The company says this latest delay was simply unavoidable, caused by the need to give waiting ships top priority.
Our imperative is to get coal onto ships and get that shipping queue down out there. And this morning we had a ship waiting for coal, and that was rail coal, and our choice was to get that coal on that ship so it could get away from Australia.
That's cold comfort to the truck drivers. After hours spent by the side of the road without running water or toilets, the truckies are angry and frustrated. But they say they're too afraid to comment publicly for fear of their jobs. Aside from the 3-hour hold-up this morning, which Port Waratah describes as short, it blames the general problem of delays on the coal companies sending too much coal by road. You're basically saying it's not your responsibility?
We don't have any responsibilities contractually with truck drivers. Coal companies and truck drivers have contractual arrangements which have nothing to do with PWCS.
The truck drivers, meanwhile, say Port Waratah's facilities are inadequate and its staffing levels too low. And while the backlog of vehicles was cleared by midday today, there's no indication the run of delays will end in the near future. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
The head of the Uniting Church's Hunter Retirement Living, Mr David Williams, claims the proposed 64-bed complex will be unique to aged care in the Hunter. Cordukes Limited has won the contract to build the complex on the site of the old Army Drill Hall in Lindsay Street, Hamilton. Instead of being transferred from a hostel suite into the ward environment of a nursing home as their need for care increases, residents will remain in their own units with all the necessary backup. 15 of the nursing home places will be offered to Greek and Italian people, many of whose relatives live in the nearby area. A neighbouring block of land has been purchased by the state government for Department of Housing pensioner units. It's a scene astronaut in waiting Major Pamela Malroy is only too familiar with. As part of NASA's space program, she works in a team that carries out the pre-flight checks on the shuttles and straps the other astronauts in.
I first was interested when I was about 11 years old, part of the Apollo program. It was starting to wind down at that time, but I made the decision that that was what I wanted to do with my life. And at that time, all of the astronauts were military test pilots, so I decided that's what I would be too.
As a test pilot and flying combat missions during Operation Desert Storm, Pamela kept sight of her ambition to fly in space. It offers a new frontier for science, zero gravity, the perfect test lab for possible cures for many of the Earth's worst diseases. The astronaut was in Newcastle to promote the Australian International Space School and to encourage other starry-eyed students.
And you can tell by the fire in their eyes that they are very interested in that. And I think that's one of the nice things about the school. When I was their age, I wanted to be an astronaut, but I had no one to talk about it with. I had no one to teach me about space. And hopefully we can funnel them into the right careers that will lead them to that.
And when does Pamela get to go up?
It looks like it's going to be sometime in 1998, probably in the first half. A year from when you get assigned to when you actually fly, so 1998.
"33-year-old Kieran Forbes is the stable foreman for trainer Paul Perry and is in charge of millions of dollars in horseflesh at Broadmeadow. He and 20-year-old jockey Malcolm Ollerton today pleaded guilty to assault in Newcastle Court. Magistrate Col Elliott found the offences occurred in August last year, while two young strappers, a 17-year-old youth and a 19-year-old girl, were being intimate in the young man's lodgings. He found Forbes had put both his hands on the youth and held him down, while Ollerton touched the young woman on the leg. While the assault was of a minor nature, Magistrate Elliott said it occurred while the two strappers were in a moment of emotional delicacy. Both victims have since left the stables. Magistrate Col Elliott described the men's behaviour as reprehensible. He placed both on a 2-year good behaviour bond and fined them $500. He was told that irrespective of the court's decision, the chief steward in Newcastle had said the men's positions were unlikely to be affected.
It was chaos at Bergman House this morning. Treasured personal items taken haphazardly from rooms and jumbled into a truck. Confused residents wandered aimlessly around an empty building that was once home.
These people are treated worse than criminals. A criminal, when he gets sentenced, is put in a car or an ambulance or a police car and is taken to the cell. These people didn't even get that courtesy. The minister in charge should be ashamed of himself.
After 18 years, the boarding house owners were ordered last week to make $30,000 worth of fire safety improvements or have their licence revoked. The state government says it didn't shut the hostel down, it merely required safety work to be done, and the decision to close was a commercial one for the owners. But residents and their friends are laying the blame squarely on the doorstep of the government, claiming it wanted too much done in too short a time.
Some have been here 18 years. Some 10, and you're just ripping them apart. You're tearing their hearts out of them. You're stripping them of their dignity. And Lord only knows it's hard enough for them to hang on to what dignity they've got.
Bev and Kevin Shipway wed here 14 years ago. This is their marital home and they don't want to go.
Awful, broken-hearted.
What are you going to do?
I don't know.
In addition to the pain of being forced out of their home and split from their friends of many years, these people say their future is a blank page. They'll be moved to temporary accommodation at Belmont and Dudley, but how long they stay and where they're taken to next is anyone's guess. As for Bergman House, the owners say it will be demolished. Laura Saperstein, NBN News. At Belmont Courthouse today, 80 residents of a Newcastle relocatable home park took their complaint to the Residential Tenancies Tribunal. They say a $2.80 rent increase, taking the weekly fee to almost $80, is unjustified.
We own our own homes, we've paid for them, and we maintain them.
Many of them are pensioners, and even such a small hike makes a big dent in their incomes.
I'm a single pensioner and I pay the same rent as married couples, and it's more than half our pension.
Several have put their homes on the market, saying they want to get out before the rents grow even higher. Between 1992 and 95, their rent went up by $11.87, but the pension increased by only $8.75. Because of the rent hikes, residents say their houses won't sell, and those that do don't fetch enough money to buy a retirement home unit.
Park owners have taken advantage of the fact that the park residents are in a captive position.
The conciliation session before the tribunal failed to achieve a compromise today. That means the dispute will go to a full hearing. The park's owners said they did not wish to make a comment on the matter. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
Earlier this year, environmental groups protested RZM's sand mining operations in the Tomago area. Among their concerns, pollution reaching groundwater and contaminating the water table. However, the Environment Protection Authority has been working on a solution. It's now placed a series of strict new controls on the mining company.
The aim is to both minimise the initial impact and to monitor the impact at the mine site and a bit further away to ensure that any impacts don't travel off-site.
From now on, the sand mining operation will be required to dispose of a byproduct called pyrite so it doesn't contaminate the water table. The EPA believes the community will be satisfied by the revised guidelines.
What we've come up with, we believe, is a way of ensuring that the mining can continue in a modified form and we can and we will protect the quality of the groundwater in the Tomago sandbeds.
RZM says it will take immediate steps to meet the stricter conditions. Blake Doyle, NBN News. More than 1,200 students from Merriwa in the west to Taree in the north are competing in the two-day event. Track events were the order of the day. Warners Bay High's Mark Wilson winning the boys' 17 years 200 metres final. And an up-and-coming star, Daniel Izzard of Francis Greenway High, taking honours in the 12 years boys 200 metres. Organisers say the future of Hunter athletics looks secure with several records tumbling.
We've got a new record already established in the 5,000 metres for the girls. In the boys' 3,000 metres event, Clint Phillip from Maitland Grossman again did very well. So the standard on the track has been very good.
While Australia's athletics champs are about to strut their stuff in Atlanta, it appears these athletes are readying themselves for Sydney 2000.
Talking to some of these children, that's their ambition, Sydney in the year 2000. And we've got some of those kids who probably will be pushing for places there.
A team will be selected to compete at the New South Wales Combined Schools Championships in early September. Blake Doyle, NBN News. Workers were busy putting the final touches to the 6,000-person capacity tent late this afternoon in preparation for tonight's debut. The company has visited the Hunter previously, but this time it's an all-new Disney show, an icy salute to Hollywood.
This is a lot faster pace. It's got 6 or 7 different storylines in there. So once one story kind of happens, it winds up and a new one begins, which that's great for the little kids because it helps, keep their concentration.
Over 40 top skaters from the United States make up the cast, which is now touring Australia. Despite Disney being synonymous with children, the cast assures it's a show for all ages.
There's great figure skating in there as well for anybody who enjoys figure skating, and also some great comedy as well. And for anybody who just appreciates theatre, the lighting, the special effects, is all that as well.
The show covers the Disney history with all favourite characters making an appearance. There's also death-defying stunts. Walt Disney's World on Ice has scheduled 10 performances at the Stardome, the last on Sunday. Blake Doyle, NBN News.